Ethan woke slowly, his head pounding. The air was warm and damp, carrying a faint metallic tang that made his throat itch. He pushed himself upright and blinked. The forest around him was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Towering trees with translucent leaves stretched toward a green-hued sky, their trunks glowing faintly as if lit from within. The ground beneath him was soft and springy, covered in a blanket of moss that shimmered with threads of gold. What the he murmured, rubbing his temples. The last thing he remembered was being on a camping trip in the mountains. There'd been a flash of light, then darkness. Now he was here, on this alien world, utterly lost and alone. Or so he thought. A rustling noise came from the undergrowth and Ethan froze. He turned his head, scanning the strange landscape. At first, he saw nothing but swaying foliage. Then a figure stepped into view, a man, though clearly not human. The newcomer's skin glistened like polished metal and his eyes shone with a silvery light. He was tall, with a lithe build, and he moved with an uncanny grace. Ethan scrambled to his feet. Who are you? The man tilted his head, studying Ethan. You speak the old language, he said, his voice smooth and melodic. Fascinating. I am Zek. Who are you? Ethan, he said cautiously. Ethan Holt. Look, I don't know how I got here, but... You must come with me, Zek interrupted. It is not safe here. What do you mean? What's not safe? Zek's expression darkened. The shadows hunt those who wander alone. Come. Before Ethan could protest, Zek turned and began walking swiftly through the forest. With no better option, Ethan hurried after him. As they moved, Ethan tried to gather his thoughts. Where am I? What is this place? This is Keldanar, Zek said without breaking stride. A world far from your own. Far? How far? Zek glanced over his shoulder. Far enough that your stars do not shine here. Your arrival is unexpected, but not unwelcome. Ethan frowned. What do you mean, unwelcome? I don't even know how I got here. We will discuss that once we reach the city, Zek said. For now, keep your voice low. The forest is alive in ways you cannot yet understand. Despite Zek's cryptic answers, Ethan's fear began to ebb. Zek didn't seem hostile, and his calm demeanor was oddly reassuring. Still, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Shadows shifted in the corner of his vision, and strange sounds like whispers came from the trees. He stayed close to Zek, hoping the man's confidence wasn't misplaced. After what felt like hours, the dense forest began to thin. In the distance, Ethan saw something that took his breath away, a city of towering spires and crystalline domes shimmering with light. The structures seemed to grow out of the ground like living things, their surfaces alive with flowing patterns of color. Is that where you live? Ethan asked. Zek nodded. It is called Carrion. My people have dwelled here for many generations. As they approached the city, Ethan noticed more figures moving among the spires, Zek's people, no doubt. Like Zek, they were tall and elegant, their features both human and alien. Some had skin that glowed faintly, while others seemed to radiate a soft luminescence. They watched Ethan with expressions of curiosity rather than fear. They're not scared of me? Ethan asked, his voice tinged with surprise. Scared? Zek's lips curved into a faint smile. Why would they be scared? Well, I'm the alien here, Ethan said. And on my world, people don't exactly greet strangers with open arms. Zek stopped and turned to face Ethan fully. You are not a stranger to us, he said simply. You are, well, perhaps it is best if the elders explain. They have been waiting for you. Ethan blinked. The elders? Waiting for me? How could they be waiting for me? I've never been here before. Zek's smile deepened, but he said no more. Instead, he beckoned for Ethan to follow and led him into the city. The streets were paved with a material that felt soft yet firm underfoot, and the air was filled with a faint hum, as though the city itself was alive. Ethan couldn't help but stare at the buildings. They glimmered and shifted as though made of liquid glass, reflecting the green sky and the pale, distant sun. Small, glowing orbs floated through the air, casting gentle light and guiding their way. The people, Zek's people, gave Ethan nods and smiles as they passed, though no one stopped to speak. Ethan felt like an exhibit in a museum, admired but not approached. The attention was unsettling, but it wasn't hostile. If anything, he sensed a kind of reverence in their gazes. Zek, seriously, Ethan said. Why is everyone acting like they know me? I'm just some guy from Earth. I don't belong here. You will understand soon, Zek said. Patience, Ethan Holt. They arrived at a large, domed structure at the heart of the city. The doors opened silently, and Zek led Ethan inside. The interior was just as dazzling as the exterior, with walls that seemed to pulse faintly with light. At the center of the chamber stood a group of 5 figures, elders, Ethan assumed. They were taller than Zek, their features even more striking. Their eyes glowed brighter, and their voices, when they spoke, resonated like music. "Welcome, Ethan Holt," one of the elders said. "We have waited for this day." Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "Why? I don't even know how I got here. I was camping back on Earth, and then, poof, I woke up in your forest." "You did not arrive here by chance," another elder said. "Your coming was foretold. You are the Pathfinder." Ethan stared. "The what?" "The Pathfinder," Zek repeated. "A figure from our oldest stories. One who would come from beyond the stars to help guide our people through the trials that lie ahead." Ethan shook his head. "You've got the wrong guy. I'm not some legendary hero. I'm just a normal guy." "The stars themselves mark you as the one," the first elder said. "And so you are here. Whether you choose to embrace this role or not, your presence signals a turning point." Ethan opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. What was the point? These people were convinced he was their mythical pathfinder. He wasn't going to change their minds in one conversation. Instead, he looked to Zek. "Zek, what do I do now?" he asked. Zek placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture that was both steadying and reassuring. "First, you rest. Then we will begin. Together." Chapter 2, A World of Wonder. Ethan's first night in Carrion was uneasy. The bed, though soft and welcoming, felt unfamiliar. The city's gentle hum never ceased, as if the place breathed quietly around him. When morning came, he barely felt rested. He dressed in the simple robes Zek had provided and made his way to the door, where Zek was already waiting. "Good morning, Ethan," Zek said. "I trust you're ready to see more of our world." "Ready as I'll ever be," Ethan replied, still not entirely sure what he'd agreed to. "Where are we going?" "To meet someone who may answer more of your questions." "A friend of mine, Kalen, is eager to speak with you," Zek said. "He's been studying Earth's transmissions for many years." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "You mean you've been picking up signals from Earth? For how long?" "For centuries, though only fragments reach us," Zek explained as they walked. "Kalen has pieced together what he can. He believes you may help us understand what we could not." The streets of Carrion bustled with activity. The HFY moved gracefully, their voices like soft music as they spoke to one another. Ethan noticed a few children playing with floating spheres of light, laughing as they darted and danced through the air. The city felt alive in a way that was hard to describe, vibrant, full of motion and sound, yet serene. "Do you all live in the city?" Ethan asked, glancing at Zek. "Most of us," Zek said. "But there are smaller settlements beyond the forests. We'll visit them soon. But first, to Kalen." They entered a tall, spiraling tower at the city's edge. Inside, the air was cooler and the walls seemed to shimmer faintly with each step they took. Zek led him up a curved staircase, past rooms filled with intricate machinery and shelves lined with crystalline objects. Ethan caught glimpses of other HFY in the hallways, all of them focused on their work. Finally, they reached a large, circular chamber. In its center stood a man who looked older than Zek, though still striking, with the same metallic sheen to his skin. He wore a long robe that shifted colors in the light. As he turned to face them, his silver eyes seemed to pierce right through Ethan. "Kalen," Zek said, "this is Ethan Holt." Kalen stepped forward, his expression one of curiosity rather than warmth. "The Pathfinder," he said, his voice deep and resonant. "So the stories are true." "Hold on," Ethan said quickly. "Before we get into any of that, I need to know what you think you know about me. I didn't choose to come here. I don't even know how I got here. I'm just me. A guy who was camping back on Earth." Kalen tilted his head slightly. "You believe you are here by accident?" "That's what I've been saying," Ethan replied. "I don't even know how your people have heard of Earth, let alone why you think I'm some kind of hero." Kalen walked to a nearby console and tapped a few glowing symbols. A holographic image appeared above the console, showing a grainy video feed of an old Earth satellite broadcast. The image flickered and distorted, but Ethan recognized it immediately. A snippet of a 1960s space launch. It switched to another image, this time a fragment of a news broadcast. The clips were brief, fragmented, but unmistakably human in origin. "These are the signals we've received over centuries," Kalen said. "From them, We learned of your world's languages, cultures, and achievements. We studied them, and in time we uncovered certain patterns, references that matched our oldest texts. Our legends spoke of a figure who would come from the stars, someone who would help guide us. When you arrived, it seemed significant. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, trying to process what he was hearing. So you're saying these ancient stories just happen to line up with some old Earth broadcasts? That doesn't make sense. I don't claim to understand the full connection, Kalen admitted. But the fact remains, you are here. And the arrival of an Earthling at this time, in this place, is not something we can ignore. Even if I'm not some pathfinder, Ethan said. What do you expect me to do? That is what we hope to discover, Kalen said, his expression softening slightly. For now, we must learn from each other. I want to show you what we have found, what we have built here, and hear your perspective. It may help us both. Ethan glanced at Zek, who gave a small nod of encouragement. Fine, Ethan said. Show me what you've got. Kalen led them to another chamber filled with strange machines. The devices emitted a faint hum and glowed faintly as Kalen moved among them, explaining their purpose. One machine displayed more of the Earth broadcasts, while another seemed to translate text and audio into the ZHYR's flowing language. We have long tried to decipher the intent behind these messages, Kalen said, gesturing to a screen displaying an old Apollo mission transcript. Some of your world's words have no equivalent in our tongue. Your concepts of exploration, curiosity, even humor, these have been difficult to interpret. Ethan watched as the translation machine struggled with a snippet of dialogue from a talk show. The resulting text in the ZHYR language flowed like water, but Kalen frowned at it. The nuance is lost, he said. Your world's humor eludes us. Humor's tricky, Ethan admitted. Even on Earth, what's funny to one person might not be to another. Kalen looked thoughtful. Perhaps that is why you must help us understand. Humor, creativity, spontaneity, these are things we admire, yet they remain elusive. Ethan found himself unexpectedly intrigued. He hadn't thought about the cultural gap between humans and aliens in terms of something as simple as a joke, but the ZHYR's earnest desire to understand was hard to ignore. I'll do what I can, Ethan said, though he wasn't sure how much help he'd actually be. Kalen's expression brightened. Good. There is much to learn. Zek, who had remained quiet until now, spoke up. If we are to understand each other, Ethan must also see more of our world. Kalen, perhaps we can arrange for him to meet the artisans at the southern terrace. Kalen nodded. An excellent idea. Our artisans embody the heart of what it means to be ZHYR. Ethan, I think you will find their work enlightening. Sure, Ethan said. Lead the way. As they left the chamber, Ethan felt a flicker of something he couldn't quite name. Not hope exactly, but a faint curiosity. Maybe there was more to this place than he'd thought. Maybe, just maybe, he could find a purpose here, even if he wasn't the mythical figure they believed him to be. For now, he decided it wouldn't hurt to keep an open mind. Chapter 3, The Threat Within. As Ethan adjusted to life in Carrion, he began to notice cracks in the otherwise harmonious city. The friendly smiles of ZHYR passers-by sometimes turned into quiet whispers as soon as he walked past. He wasn't sure if he was imagining it, but there seemed to be a tension in the air, something just beneath the surface. Even Zek, who had been a constant guide since Ethan's arrival, seemed more guarded than usual. One afternoon, Ethan found Zek in one of the city's airy libraries, poring over a translucent tablet. You look worried, Ethan said, pulling up a stool beside him. Is something going on? Zek hesitated, then placed the tablet down. I didn't want to trouble you with this, but it seems some of our people aren't pleased about your presence. Ethan frowned. Aren't pleased? What does that mean? I thought everyone was glad I was here. Not everyone, Zek admitted. Some believe that your arrival could disrupt the balance we've worked so hard to maintain. They fear change. Great, Ethan muttered. I've been here, what, a few days? And already I'm stirring the pot. You've done nothing wrong, Zek assured him. But not all of us agree on what your presence represents. I'd hope we could ease their concerns with time. Ethan leaned back in his chair, trying to absorb this. So what happens now? Are they going to come after me or something? Not directly, Zek said. But I think it's time you saw more of our world. Perhaps meeting more of our people, seeing how we live, will help you understand why they feel as they do and why others are so glad you're here. Ethan nodded slowly. Okay. Show me. The next day, Zek led Ethan to a part of the city he hadn't visited yet, a series of open terraces that overlooked the surrounding forests. Here, artisans worked on elaborate sculptures made of glowing crystal, while others crafted intricate patterns into sheets of translucent metal. The air was filled with the soft hum of their tools and the quiet murmurs of conversation. "This is the Southern Terrace," Zek explained. "It's where our artisans create some of the most treasured pieces of our culture." Ethan watched as one of the artists, a wiry man with angular features, turned a chunk of shimmering material into a delicate flower-like structure. "They're incredible," Ethan said. "It's like they're working with liquid light." The artist glanced up and nodded politely, but there was no warmth in his expression. Ethan noticed that many of the artisans cast similar glances his way. It was clear they weren't entirely comfortable with his presence. Zek noticed it too. "They're not used to outsiders," he said quietly. "But give it time. They may come to see you as one of us." Ethan wasn't so sure. He followed Zek through the terraces, watching the artisans at work until they reached a small group gathered around a low table. They appeared to be examining a large piece of carved stone, its surface etched with intricate symbols. "This is Tyrell," Zek said, gesturing to a broad-shouldered man who was clearly the leader of the group. "He's one of our most skilled carvers." Tyrell looked up, his eyes narrowing slightly when they landed on Ethan. "So, you're the human," he said. "The one they call the Pathfinder." Ethan nodded cautiously. "Yeah, that's what they keep telling me." Tyrell set down his carving tool and crossed his arms. "You don't look like much." "Thanks," Ethan said dryly. "Good to know I'm making a great first impression." Zek stepped in quickly. "Tyrell, Ethan is here to learn about us. He's not what you think." "And what is he exactly?" Tyrell asked, his tone sharp. "A visitor? A curiosity? Or something more dangerous?" Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but Zek cut him off. "He's someone who wants to understand us," Zek said firmly. "And someone we can learn from." Tyrell's gaze lingered on Ethan for a long moment before he shrugged. "We'll see." As they walked away, Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "So much for a warm welcome." Zek sighed. "Tyrell is cautious, but not unreasonable. He'll come around." Ethan wasn't convinced, but he didn't push the issue. Instead, he tried to focus on what he had learned that day. The HFY were far from a united people, despite the city's beauty and the apparent peace. There were deep divisions, and his presence was stirring something that had been lying dormant. That night, as Ethan lay in bed, he couldn't stop thinking about Tyrell's words. He wasn't sure what he was supposed to be to these people, teacher, student, symbol, or threat. And if even a part of their society didn't want him there, what would happen if things boiled over? He stared up at the softly glowing ceiling, his mind racing. "Zek," he murmured under his breath. "What am I supposed to do here?" The silence that followed felt heavier than any answer. Chapter 4. A Delicate Alliance. Ethan wasn't sure how much more understanding he could handle. Between the wary glances in the artisan quarters and Tyrell's blunt dismissal, he felt like he was walking on thin ice. The last few days had been a blur of tense introductions and cautious conversations. While some HFYR were warm and welcoming, like Zek, many others were more reserved. A handful were openly hostile. Zek noticed Ethan's unease. One afternoon, as they stood on a high terrace overlooking the city, he broached the topic. "You seem troubled." "You think," Ethan said with a half-laugh. "I'm not exactly winning any popularity contests here." "Not everyone sees you as an outsider," Zek said. "Some believe your presence could lead to greater unity among our people." "Yeah, well, it's hard to feel that when you've got guys like Tyrell sizing you up like a threat," Ethan replied. "And what if he's right? What if I am a threat? I don't even know why I'm here, Zek. You keep saying this Pathfinder thing, but I don't even know what that means." "It means you have the potential to guide us through the unknown," Zek said patiently. "To help us make choices we've been avoiding for too long." Ethan leaned on the railing and looked out at the sprawling city. "And what if I don't want that responsibility? What if I just want to go home?" Zek placed a hand on his shoulder. "If going home were possible, I would help you. But the reality is you are here now. Perhaps we can focus on what can be done, rather err in carry-on. Perhaps seeing how they live will give you a clearer picture of our world, and your place in it." "Fine," Ethan said. "It's not like I have anything better to do." The next morning, Zek and Ethan left the city behind. The journey was long. taking them through dense forests filled with towering, glowing plants and strange, whispering sounds. As they walked, Ethan found himself asking more questions about the ZHYR's history, their culture, and the technology that seemed both advanced and organic. Zek answered as best he could, but Ethan noticed that some questions made him hesitate. What about those who don't agree with the council? Ethan asked at one point. Do they just go along with it, or do they push back? There have always been disagreements, Zek said carefully. The council seeks consensus, but there are those who believe we have become too complacent. Some wish to return to our ancestral ways, living closer to the land. Others see change as a threat. Sounds like Earth, Ethan said. People arguing over who's right, what traditions to keep, what to leave behind. Indeed, Zek replied. It seems some struggles are universal. When they reached the first nomadic settlement, Ethan was surprised by how different it felt from Carrion. The dwellings were more rustic, built from materials that blended seamlessly with the environment. The people were dressed in simpler clothes, their hands calloused from work. Yet they greeted Zek warmly, and to Ethan's surprise, they were more curious than wary about him. One of the clan leaders, a man named Kian, approached them. He was shorter than Zek, with a broad frame and a weathered face. You're the human, Kian said, looking Ethan over. The one they've been talking about. Yeah, that's me, Ethan said. I guess you've heard the stories? Stories, legends, whispers. It's all the same, Kian said, motioning for them to sit by a fire. But I prefer to judge a person by what they do, not what people say about them. Well, I haven't done much of anything yet, Ethan admitted. Kian chuckled. Then you have a clean slate. That's not such a bad thing. The next few days were filled with conversation and shared work. Kian and his people showed Ethan how they lived off the land, harvesting strange fruits and hunting small, swift creatures. Ethan, in turn, told them about Earth, about its forests, its oceans, and its endless debates over how best to live. The nomads seemed intrigued, asking him questions he didn't always have answers to. As they worked side by side, Ethan began to feel a sense of camaraderie. Kian's straightforward demeanor was refreshing after the politicking in Carrion. The clan's way of life was simpler, but it wasn't easy. They faced their challenges head-on, and there was a quiet strength in that. One evening, as they sat around the fire, Kian leaned over to Ethan. You know, not everyone back in the city thinks the same way we do. They've got their rules, their councils, their fancy titles. Out here, it's different. We listen to each other. We make decisions together. Maybe that's something you can bring back with you. Ethan looked at him, surprised. You think I should go back? I think you should go where you feel you're needed, Kian said. But if you do go back, take what you've learned here. Show them that there's another way. Ethan didn't know what to say. He felt a flicker of something. Not a calling exactly, but a sense that maybe, just maybe, he could make a difference. Even if he didn't understand his role as Pathfinder, he could at least try to be a bridge between these different worlds. For the first time, he felt like he was part of something bigger, something worth figuring out. Chapter 5, A New Path. Ethan's return to Carrion felt different this time. The city seemed brighter, more alive, though perhaps it was just his perspective that had shifted. Having spent weeks among the nomads, he had seen a different side of the ZHYR, one that didn't rely on intricate structures or glowing spires to define itself. It was a side that valued cooperation, trust, and the kind of connection that didn't require grand titles or lofty promises. Those were ideas he intended to carry back with him. Do you think the council will even listen to me? Ethan asked as he and Zek walked along the city's main avenue. It was the first time since his arrival that he didn't feel like a stranger in these streets. The people still glanced his way, but there was curiosity now rather than suspicion. They will listen, Zek said firmly. You have seen more of our world than most who live here. Your perspective is valuable. And the clans trust you, Ethan. That alone carries weight. They reached the council chamber, a grand hall of shimmering stone that curved upward into a domed ceiling. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. The council members, tall and imposing in their flowing robes, were seated in a semicircle, their expressions unreadable. But one thing was clear, they had been waiting for him. Ethan took a deep breath. So, where do I start? Be honest, Zek advised quietly. Tell them what you've seen. What you've learned. With Zek at his side, Ethan stepped forward. He addressed the council, recounting his journey through Carrion and beyond. He described the artisans, the nomads, and the conversations he had shared. He spoke of the challenges they faced, factions within the city that feared change, and clans that were wary of the city's influence. He didn't try to paint himself as a savior or pretend to have all the answers. Instead, he focused on the simple truth that their world was diverse, complex, and full of potential if only they could come together. One of the council members, a woman named Selin, leaned forward. "You speak as if you have found a solution. Do you truly believe you can unify our people?" "I don't know if I can unify anyone," Ethan said. "But I think you can. I think we all can if we're willing to listen to each other. The clans don't need to be forced into city life, and the city doesn't need to fear the clan's independence. You've built something incredible here. It's not perfect, but it's something worth building on." Selin's expression remained serious, but Ethan thought he saw a glimmer of interest in her eyes. Another council member, Tyrell, yes, that Tyrell, stood up and addressed Ethan directly. "And what makes you think we can overcome the mistrust that has lingered for generations?" Ethan met Tyrell's gaze. "Because I've seen it happen. When I first met Kian and the nomads, they didn't trust me. Hell, they barely tolerated me. But over time, through work, through talking, we found common ground. It's not easy, and it won't happen overnight, but it's possible. You just have to be willing to try." The chamber fell quiet. The council members exchanged glances, their expressions thoughtful. Finally, Selin spoke again. "If we are to pursue this path, it will require more than words. It will take commitment. And the willingness to change." Ethan nodded. "I'm not saying it's going to be easy. But isn't it worth the effort?" For a moment, no one spoke. Then Tyrell, much to Ethan's surprise, stepped forward. "You're not the Pathfinder I imagined," he said gruffly. "But perhaps that's not a bad thing." Ethan wasn't sure if that counted as a compliment, but he'd take it. Selin stood and addressed the chamber. "We will consider your words, Ethan Holt. And we will begin discussions with the nomadic clans to explore how we might move forward together. This will not be the work of one person, but of many. Still, your presence here has been a catalyst, and for that we are grateful." Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Thank you," he said simply. As the meeting adjourned, Zek placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "You did well." "Did I?" Ethan asked, still unsure. "I mean, they're not exactly throwing a parade." "Change takes time," Zek said. "But you've taken the first step." They left the council chamber and walked back out into the city. The sun, or whatever passed for a sun on this world, was beginning to set, casting a golden-green light over Carrion's spires. Ethan looked around at the people, the glowing structures, and the sky that was so alien yet had started to feel familiar. He realized that, for the first time since arriving here, he wasn't just an outsider. He was part of something bigger. He still didn't know what the future held, but he was ready to face it. Together,